questions, Stephen?
Well, yes, I guess there's some questions. Who wants to ask some questions now? Any questions from any of these gentlemen? Or Stephen?
Kira, I would first very much like to congratulate where you've got to. When I got into Parliament late 2011 and it was early 2012 when we got into action, one of the first things I was trying to do was to bring stuff that Sue Kedgley, my predecessor, had been working on to the Select Committee. And ultimately that one went through to the Local Government Environment one. But under primary production, and I'll be open, we're not meant to talk about what happens in committee, they said, no point bringing them in, they're all divided. And I was pretty damn frustrated with that, to be honest, and I said, as one of the top committees in the country, we must be still working for the bees regardless of how industry and the sector was together. And then it's been so good to see the work being done, and I congratulate you guys up there. Both Ricky and John in particular would have been at the helm of your different ones, or other people before you, all grappling with this issue. And by the way, I think it's a fantastic speech you just made there that encapsulates that need for unity. I was up in Northland recently and met with some beekeepers that will be very supportive, but I also tripped over one that was already looking at going off in some different direction with some sort of frustration, and that very much disappointed me that that person wasn't prepared to be getting in and in support. The more people that are involved, of course, the more and as long as you're very democratic, the more democratic the situation will be, and the better representation this new Apiculture New Zealand will go. So I hope that everybody here, well, this is my question, I guess. It's not. Everybody
I was
here,
wondering when that was coming.
Yeah, will be going back out to their branches and making sure that they get people in, because only if they're in and inclusive will Apiculture New Zealand do all those things, have that great link with government and opposition that you need to get advancement and solve those issues that you've got. So my question, I suppose, is more really about ensuring that there is transparency, that there is good communication out to everybody, and congratulations and good on yous. Cheers.
Perhaps I could just respond briefly to that, and then the gentleman may like to do this. We went down to Parliament, as we said, to talk to ministers about the possibility of really setting up this research thing, and we had a function in Parliament afterwards, and 17 members came to that, including members from a group of members from every party. So this typified the unity that we've got in terms of the parliamentary side of things. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has passed when we have the ability to be indulgent and do the things we've done in the past. We've grown up, we've become a new industry, we've become a serious new industry, and the time for petty little silly things is past. Just as children find that past, we are now in the big game, and we intend to stick there and be in the big game. Gentlemen, would you like to comment on any of that? All right, is there any other questions that anybody wants to ask?
Just a brief question.
All right, we'll go over here first.
I'd just like to know what the way is forward. Do we get a compulsory membership or anything like that? Last year and the year before, we've heard something like you guys need $1.5 million. But if there's nothing like a compulsory membership, you never get it, do we? I mean, same as this conference, I've already heard 4, 5, 6 times that we need more money. But where's it coming from? And same thing as we looking at this whole gathering here, I think this is not part of our membership, is it? I mean,
Well, this is quite a complicated question, and the board, of course, is going to be answering those things. You've got your AGM tomorrow, and I don't really want to prolong things with a very long answer for that, except to say this, that since the establishment of Apiculture New Zealand, there's been already several hundred new people coming to join the organisation. So it's a question of a balance. If these gentlemen are seen to be doing a good job, and apiculture is the big game in town, then anybody who has any intelligence will join it.
So how many members are there at the moment?
Well, I can't answer that, but
Before we had 700, if you say in the last time we had 700 more, there must be something like 1,400.
well, there's some who haven't rejoined, of course, but that actually we're ahead of where we were before. But again, that's not my question. But, you know, that's it. Now, another question over here.
I just wanted to ask, what relationship does Apiculture New Zealand intend to engage with the small local beekeeping clubs, and how inclusive does Apiculture New Zealand want to become with those beekeeping clubs?
I'm not sure if you're aware, but on Saturday night there was actually a meeting held here in Rotorua. Invitations were issued to all the clubs in New Zealand. I understand that we had the contact addresses for, and the meeting was to meet firstly the new board representative for the hubs, for the clubs, you know, for the non-commercial beekeepers, and that particular meeting asked for had I guess a description, some views from the new board member, and he sought a lot of input from all those people that attended. I think there were 12 or 13 clubs that attended that meeting, and from there were some very positive suggestions put forward. The board and ApiNZ are very keen to engage with the non-commercial sector. That's really, really important. It was important before, it's more important now. There are over 6,000 non-commercial members in our industry, so it's a large group of people. They do a great job for what they are doing, but we want to make sure that we're putting more education and more opportunity down into those clubs so that they can use that. And one of the things we've done is actually videoed this whole conference, and all the different sessions will be in the future, once we get a bit organised, made available to do educational evenings at the clubs and things like that. For those people that couldn't come to the conference, we're able to take the conference to them, and that's part of the whole process of what we're trying to do. We're looking to increase the dialogue. I'm fairly sure Kim Pointer's sitting at the back behind us here who facilitated the meeting on Saturday, and one of the very positive things that came out of that was that perhaps the non-commercial should be getting together and having a bit of a workshop twice a year and start to look at what they want from industry and how they can be supported and what they can offer back. And I think that's all really positive stuff.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the other answer, of course, is that the new board recognises that they have to win your favour, in the sense that they're starting out and they know the difficulties that are there. Of course, I won't be there, but they know the difficulties that are there, and they've got the job of doing it. But it's got to be a marriage between the people out there and the people up here. And together, if you do it well, you can do it better than any other industry. Any further questions? Yes?
Good evening. My question is for Api New Zealand. Will you still be part of the Apicultural Association Global? Are you going to be a signatory to this?
To ApiMondia?
ApiMondia, yeah.
I believe that we will probably retain that membership, absolutely.
And when? Yes.
So, I mean, the board hasn't met Ruben yet, so I guess we'll just put that on the table as one of the topics that's been brought forward.
Yes, excellent. And are we going to, at some stage, tender for this?
I can actually tell you now that New Zealand Trade and Industry have already approached myself and Maureen Maxwell about bringing ApiMondia to Rotorua. But you know, it's a very, very big project. This conference took 12 months to build and to get to the point where it is. And you know, I'm personally and the team, that was a very small team that was worked with me on this, Kim, Tracy and Sarah, and the events organisers. You know, there was a huge amount of time went into it. To do an ApiMondia would be at least a couple of years worth of work, and would have to be very focused on that. But I believe that as an industry, attendance from the internationals will be very strong. They're very curious, inquisitive about how we do so well, and I think it would be a great opportunity to showcase New Zealand.
Yes, especially, and if we can bring now those top European sciences and researchers and companies to New Zealand, it'll be a benefit to the New Zealand beekeeping industry. On funding and doing research, Yes, so there is a place for it, but in a certain way, private enterprise does take up and fills a lot of those gaps when they go off and do their researches for their personal companies and then put these products on the markets. And I've seen quite a bit of innovation from New Zealand producing products from this country. And of course, they'll probably compete on the world market. And that's a good thing. 16 years this industry has really flourished. Since 2000, we got the varroa mite here in New Zealand. Man, this industry has been on steroids, as you all know. And we've had 16 years, we've built up, but the reality here today, I personally have seen a lot of very concerned hobbyists and large commercials as to where they're going to go for the next 16 years. And this is going to be the major challenge for this industry. We don't quite have the luxury of what we've had, the easygoing on the strips for the last 16 years, and it will definitely change the face of this industry. And it might even turn it a little bit greener.
Thank you, Rev.
Well, and I guess the gentleman may wish to answer it, just to say that as far as there's no suggestion that we're going to be doing research and so forth that's in competition with the people who are doing it, but there's a whole lot of stuff in, say, bee diseases or new kinds of honey which have never been really exploited, or a whole series of things, traceability and all those things. And let's just say this, it's always nicer to have government money than yours, isn't it? Yes. So, gentlemen, would you like to respond to that further? Okay, is there any other questions that anybody has? Well, looks like we've done.
May as well carry on with the research point. So how does Apiculture New Zealand intend to engage with Crown Research Institutes, where we get core funding for particular sectors? So plant and food research have core funding for hive and health research. How do you intend to engage with us and us with you to move that whole area of bee health forward and hive production forward, since we're charged by government to be able to do that?
Can I just answer that we're very early stages of this, but obviously now that these gentlemen are in charge of Api New Zealand, the potential for working with government, which the government's indicated, exists. If you were a whole series of bits and pieces and so forth, the government doesn't really want to engage in quite the same way. So we're in that discussion at the moment, or will be in that discussion about the structure of that. It's not actually got to the stage where you say that we're specifying any kind of research. The first thing you have to do is establish where all this would fit. And you mentioned core funding and things like that. Well, core funding exists for industries that are united and the government can engage with. So all these things are on the table, but nothing is determined, and it's just part of this whole thing of being put together. I seem to be answering all the questions rather than these gentlemen. That's what.
Doing a good job now.
Is there any other questions anybody wants to answer?
Is this on here?
Yes.
Partly a question, partly a statement, of course. You wouldn't expect anything different from me. I hear what you're saying, and what we've heard this morning has been great, and your address was fantastic, and as one who's got a fairly long history in the politics of this industry, the changes are well overdue. I think, to tell you the truth, we're playing a little bit of catch-up right now. We probably should have made this change a decade ago. Some of us talked about it a decade ago, but it hasn't happened. It takes time to get these things going. I think, talking about this core funding for research, the whole picture. We've heard the message. The government says they want an industry group to talk to. Why? They want to talk to the industry group because, A, they're partly responsible through the legislation for providing the, if you like, the impetus or the ability for the industry to continue. Secondly, they see this industry as a future, certainly something that's going to give, the future is going to be a very profitable picture, and they could actually add that to their portfolio of things that have worked. So between that, their interest in us and our need to answer some of our questions lies the ability that we have to get the support we need to get the job done. However, I would just say one thing, this is where my question comes in. how quickly we're going to move on the fact that we need to, as an industry, also have some funding to put into anything that we want to do in order for us to gain the support we can get from government. I'm talking here about that dirty word called levy.
Does someone want to answer that?
Look, honestly, I think that's really should be dealt with by the new board rather than us sitting up here. We have signalled already that, from my personal point of view, I believe it's a very wise step. But look, it's not for me to answer that, and I think it's better that we let the board address that. I'm sure that it'll be a high priority question.
And I'd just say one thing. I'm chair of the Primary Group Partnership. In that case, you've got the government putting in about 3 million of expenditure, and you've got partners putting in about 3 million of expenditure. And there's no free lunches in this world. But if you know what you're doing, you can leverage an awful lot. And the truth is, listening to all the folk that you've had on this table, speaking from here during the week, every one of them is running on half a smell of an oily rag. So we don't know where all this is going, but we do have to work to see what we can do. And these gentlemen and me, none of us have anything firmly in mind as such. Nothing is in concrete. But the indication from all the ministers and from the government and from Scott, who came and spoke, is that they want to engage. And it might be that there's something happens and you'll make the decision in the end. But the opportunity is there. And we've got to stop thinking in terms of small scale. We've got to think about the industry we are, the size, the importance, and the future.
You're right, Neil.
I have a question, probably John, you would answer this. As a person, Neil Mosso, who's been on BIG and MBA executive for 10 years, resigned from everything, I'm in retirement now. But as a grassroots beekeeper, how do we have an issue in the Bay of Plenty, for example, and we've got an issue, so how do we communicate with the board, and how are the board going to vote on an issue? So how we, in the old days we had, I don't know how it's going to work, but the future, we had remits and we discussed it at the AGM, etc. Do we have to wait a year, or do we, as issues come up, how's the...
I can answer that, Neil, because you've got a really good business and you don't wait a year to get your questions answered. And
no.
I don't expect that you're going to sit there and wait 12 months to get that dealt with, and I wouldn't expect the industry would want to wait 12 months to deal with whatever that particular issues you're talking about, because I'm not quite sure what it is.
It'll be one. So when we have this issue, and when the Bay of Plenty affects the beekeepers and affects me, and then I get quite worked up about it. So how am I going to make access to the board? Do I have to go through the hub and talk to our hub representative, who then takes it to the board? Or do I just go, I can ring you up, and I can be an earful.
You know that you can ring me up.
Yeah.
And I think you can ring any of your board members up and ask those questions and express your concerns. I mean, that's what good open dialogue's all about. Is there a formal communication line of how that's going to happen? I'm going to have to leave that till we have those discussions tomorrow, and we'll certainly table that particular concern. But I wouldn't be sitting back sweating the small stuff or sweating the big stuff, waiting for an opportunity to ask that question. I would be asking that question either in an email or by phone as quickly as possible, and so that people have an opportunity to consider what the problem is and what maybe a solution might be and how we can work that solution. There are some really, really big issues that we face at the moment, and they've been touched on by a number of people over the last 3 days on some of the different concerns: overcrowding, overstocking, boundary pillaging, all sorts of stuff that's been talked about. None of them are easy to deal with, but we do need to sit down and look at a way that the industry can move forward. I don't think it really matters whether it's directly a beekeeping matter or a market issue. It's an industry issue that we have to deal with because it affects everybody.
So if Neil has his issue and he rings you, you make a decision on his issue, one person.
No. What I will do is
Can you
take
clarify
that.
that, please?
Yeah. What I would do is I would probably ask Neil to put it in writing, and then I would circulate it through Daniel to the board for consideration and response. Now, some of those responses perhaps can be dealt with relatively quickly if it's simple, but if it's a more challenging one, of course, obviously it's going to have to be wider consultation with the industry and all that sort of stuff. But look, it's very early days. You know, the new entity only started on the 1st of April. The new board only got appointed very recently, just in the last week or so. So I just ask that you give it a chance.
Another question, John, because I'm just an ordinary beekeeper now. Question, there is concern, because Mossop's an integrated company, so we're involved in everything there is involved in the industry. But beekeepers are concerned of just producing honey. I would say that there's not always a lot of love lost between the beekeeper exporter and the packer, etc. But the concern is that there's 4 members on the board who are, packer representatives, exporters, and then there's 4 that are commercial beekeepers, and then one hobbyist. There's concern that the packers and exporters are going to run us all beekeepers out of business.
Well, actually, the AIGB looked at all of these things. Now, the first thing is that's still thinking in the old way. The fact of the matter is that we want to have a united industry, and it is not me and you, it is us. And as such, we would hope that as there will be tensions between the various groups. That's why there's representation on the way it is. There's an independent chair, there's a hobbyist, those sorts of things. The intention is to, in time, to forget about those ancient divisions and move towards a situation in which we're thinking of the industry as a whole. I said about the idea of the Royal Court, in which there was a circle where people could come and discuss these issues without actually rancour or difficulty. And that's what it is, a forum for debate, a forum for industry issues. And in time, we know there are people who have particular representations and particular things, and that'll be the tensions that they have to resolve. But we would like to think that they were all acting in the industry's interests as a whole and not just in their own little sector for their own little people.
Neil, if I can just add, there's a couple of issues here, and one of them we wrote a piece in the latest magazine on. So if there's a major issue that the industry as a whole needs to resolve by way of a special resolution or otherwise, obviously it comes to all of the members to vote. And I'm well aware of the feedback that the packers are somehow going to take over and there's going to be a loss of power and all of that type of thing. But ultimately there are far more commercial beekeeping members than there are packers. In a numbers perspective, it's not possible for the packers to somehow run right over the industry unless everybody from the commercial beekeeping sector literally didn't turn up and vote. And in that case, the resolution that was raised, quite frankly, wouldn't be worth raising on that side of things if they didn't turn up to vote. So, really there isn't, purely from a numbers perspective, the opportunity for that to happen. But I think the other side is, at a board level, you've just got to leave that responsibility as a packer or a hobbyist at the door, and I think anybody who's been involved in governance, that's the expectation of it. And whilst I go along as a packer and as someone involved in a particular business, at the end of the day, we are here for industry good, and we would, you don't put your name forward for it unless you're prepared to do that. And I think it's probably a little bit negative to somehow think that I'm going to sit here and somehow want to see something bad happen within the honey industry or to beekeepers.
Well, we know if we fall over, you fall over in your company.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just to bring this on another step, let's say in the beekeeping sector, there's 800 members, right? I pay for my $1.50 a hive. And on the other side, on the packers, exporters, there's 50. So when you're discussing, you just come to an agreement, or will there be a weighted vote? Because the packers might say, we want this, and the beekeeper representatives say, well, we've got 800 members, they were saying this, so how...
No, so you're right. So if for example, and there was an example put in that current magazine, so that if we came to a special resolution, there is a weighted voting based on that board proportion. So there's 9 roles. It's a bit easier. It would have been easier if there was 10, but essentially the hobbyists in the room, when they put their hand up, they get 1/9 of a vote. So if there were 9 members and they voted in a direction, ultimately it's one vote. Those 800 commercial beekeepers and the 50 packers have the same vote. They have 4/9 of a vote each, but as you can see there's 800 over here and there's only 50 here. I mean, just the pure weight of the votes is going to be that much greater. So whilst it appears they are the same, it all comes down to ultimately when you put your hands up and turn up and vote on an issue, it will be determined by...
So it's actually a weighted vote.
Yes, and so in reality, I mean, the previous constitution of the MBA had a weighted vote, but it was a beekeeper-only vote, and it was based on the number of hives. And now it is a vote based on where the members sit, so whether you sit in the commercial, and that's why it's important that the industry is still run by beekeepers for the good of beekeeping and ultimately the honey industry, but that's where the vote power sits.
Thank you.
Barrett, you wanted to ask a question?
Sorry, I actually didn't have a question. I was just going to say that we've had a fantastic science program over the last 3 days, and in that I'd just like to acknowledge the work that's been done by people like Dr. Oksana Borowick, who's not here, Christine Birch, who's overseas as well, John McLean and John Mackay and myself. It was in that team that put forward the abstracts that went out to the science community around the country. We got a lot of information back. Christine Birch collated that, and from that we helped to, with the team of the conference committee, we put forward the program that you've enjoyed over the last 3 days. So I'd just like to acknowledge those people.
I'd just like to thank Neil for his presentation, the guys up here. I'm going to have to call it a day. At 4:30, this whole room has to be emptied and it's set up for a dinner tonight for 440 people. So it's a big transition in about a little over 2 hours. So I just want to wrap up and say I've got one of Michelle's spiders here. Don't know where it came from. There's another one, so they're breeding. It must be a really strong queen. Anyhow, look, I'm absolutely delighted the way this conference has run over the last 3 days. I'm delighted with the response of industry to come and support it and be part of it. I'm delighted that you supported all those trade sponsors that were out in the other room, because they paid for half of this conference with their contribution to it, and we owe them a great thank you for that. We owe our speakers a great thank you for giving their time. None of them really got paid 1 cent for taking their time to do this. We acknowledged Michelle before, and acknowledging Barry and his science team for the work they did in pulling together the various speakers that we've had throughout the last 3 days. I'm delighted. I thank you for your attendance. We have a great night ahead of us for those that are coming. It'll be a lot of fun, and please, if you're desperate for a drink, I think the bar will be open for a little while. It will be reopened at 6 o'clock for you to come back in for pre-dinner drinks. The dinner will open at 7 o'clock. You will not be allowed in the room till 7, so please be aware of that. Thank you again. Have a safe travels, and greatly appreciate it. For those that are coming to the AGM tomorrow, it starts at 8:30. It's at the Sudima Hotel. The first AGM is for the Federated Farmers BIG, and that's just to wind up that organisation as we fold into ApiNZ. So thank you very much. 8:30 tomorrow, Sudima, and 7 o'clock here tonight for the dinner. Thank you.